Hey everybody, listen up. I got mega huge news. Meat Eater Live is heading back out on the road. That's right. Join me and the crew. Clay Newcomb, Cal, Yanni, Spencer's going to be there. Phil the Engineer's going to be there. Meat Eater Live, headed back out. Now, when you get every ticket, okay, every ticket you buy, you get a signed copy of our new Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook. This tour is celebrating the release of the book. Buy a ticket, get a signed copy, Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook, wild game recipes for the grill, smoker, camp stove, and campfire, which I'll point out is a $38 value. Here's where we're going to go. April 23rd, the Mesa Art Center in Mesa, Arizona. April 24, the Balboa Theater in San Diego. April 25, the Grove in Anaheim, California. April 27, the Crest Theater in Sacramento. April 29, the Union in Salt Lake City. April 30, the Egyptian in Boise. May 1, the Wilma Theater in Missoula. May 2, the Bing Crosby Theater in Spokane, Washington. May 4, Revolution Hall in Portland, Oregon. And May 5, the last day of the tour, Pantages Theater in Tacoma, Washington. For tickets and more information, visit the events page at themeateater.com. Hope to see you at the show.
Hey, this is Tyler Jones, and you're listening to the Element Podcast. What's happening, all my woods people? I am currently sitting on a couch in close to the great city of Alba, Texas, and I'm feeling good. I got to eat a little bit of pizza, and the pizza was special. And our co-host here, KC Smith, can tell you why.
Why was the pizza special? It's low carb pizza.
It's low carb.
Low carb. Slightly organic.
Slightly organic.
Not completely, but slightly.
Mm-hmm. Very slight.
3 varieties of pepper.
Mm-hmm.
And 1 variety of cervid.
What kind?
White-tailed deer.
White-tailed deer.
Mm-hmm.
So we had white-tailed deer pizzas, man, and they were good. I just hammered 2 of them. And
I'm telling you, though, maybe you're being kind, or maybe I'm just a little bit hard on my own cooking, but I didn't think they were great. Like, they were okay.
They were good.
But I've done it way better than that in the past. I don't know if it's like a cheese thing, a sauce thing, or a bread thing, but there was something that just wasn't quite as tasty about that.
I'm hard on my cooking, too, and that's just the way it is, man. 'Cause
Yeah.
sometimes you cook a meal and ain't nobody around to tell about it, you know?
Oh, no, man.
It's like, golly, that thing is awesome. Whatever it is.
That's how my morning shakes are every morning.
Just nobody to tell.
Nobody even enjoys them. Everybody's always like, that looks gross. Like, why does it matter what things look like? Just eat it, and if it tastes good, it's good.
Yep. Well, we got a little bit opinionated last week, or I did, and sometimes that is not cool to just put out there on the internet and leave forever. But unfortunately, we're doing that, and that's just the nature of the beast. We have a podcast where we talk about the things that we enjoy or that we believe in, and sometimes it happens. So we'll probably do that again this week. You know, sometimes when you get highly involved in a community of people, you start to think certain things are cool that you maybe didn't before. You start wishing you could fit in better and find yourself being someone maybe different than yourself. Sometimes you start, you know, just becoming something that you don't really recognize. And personally, I've always tried to be someone, you know, that is just who I am. And that way people that knew me years ago can find me, you know, today just simply trying to be a better version of exactly who I was back then, hopefully. Among other ramblings, if you're following, this episode is dedicated to inspire you to be yourself. It's a reminder to us as well. So with that said, Casey, tell me how Shed Rally went for you this weekend.
Well, this weekend I participated in Shed Rally on Friday only. So for those of you that don't know what Shed Rally is kind of like this big gathering or communal thing where a bunch of people across the country get out in the woods, hike around, and find shed deer antlers. And it's kind of, I guess it was started by Whitetail Properties, right?
Yeah, it's just an event that they started, basically, yeah.
And it's not like a formal event. It's just a bunch of people do the same thing on the same day, and it's called Shed Rally, and everybody gets out and walks around. It's really cool, and it's cool how it like caught on.
Yeah.
Except we saw 6 bucks on Friday, and all 6 of them were carrying both sides. Mm-hmm. Things just aren't the same in the South, and and we don't mean this to whine. It's just like, man, it was just so depressing to get out there and cover as much ground as we did, and then see all those deer that all had horns on their heads.
We saw a good one that was still holding
a deer that was like a shooter on most private places. I mean, that buck was a good buck, you know, and we didn't know him either, which was neat. But yeah, like they were all holding, and
we had a young buck fly past us and didn't lose either horn.
Put the squeeze on that sucker, man. Yeah, he had some little guys on his heads and nothing fell off.
No.
And we covered a bunch of country. I mean, I think about 3 miles, which, you know, when you're talking about thicket stuff miles, 3 miles is a lot.
Yeah.
Like I got a hurt ankle after the trip. My toe doesn't feel great.
Snake boots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyways, that was my Friday participation of Shed Rally. I found 0 sheds.
But you found a really nice fresh rub.
We did. That's another part of the interesting thing about where we live is that, man, you've got rut sign that was laid down within the past 3 days. When you say that would be pretty accurate on it? I mean, there was green shavings on the ground below this little switch.
And you found a hair in it.
It was
stick.
a deer hair.
Yeah.
Not that anything can really, nothing else can really make a sign like that anyways, but it's just like real proof, you know, like it was a deer. And it's just crazy, man. Crazy to think that here we are, it's March, and there is a buck who has enough testosterone in his body not only to not drop his antlers, but have enough testosterone in his body to not knock him off when he's rubbing on a tree. Mm-hmm. It's crazy, man.
Yeah, it is, man.
Yeah. So how was Shed Rally for you, Tyler?
Well, it was similar on Friday. Yeah, very similar. Actually, I think I found that, not to claim it or nothing, but I think I found that rub, you know, so that was part of my experience. I did a lot of walking around and breaking in snake boots, so both my heels had hot spots on them. And who knows if they're ever going to get rid of those hot spots with those snake boots.
I think they will, man. I'm telling you.
I hope.
I've spent a lot of time in snake boots, and I can remember putting them on the first time thinking, this is terrible. And then sooner or later, like, you just get them broke in.
Everything was good. And I liked what you told me about them, like keeping your shins from getting banged up with briars and stuff. Because, man.
It seemed like that worked?
Yeah, it did. And I haven't hunted just a ton of places, but I've hunted a few states. And where we spend a lot of our time here in Texas on public lands, it's like green briars everywhere, man. And they just don't feel good because they don't like break. You know, they're locked into the ground and then locked into something above them. And like when you rip your shin across them, your shin is the only thing breaking, really. So, other than that, let's see, Saturday. Oh, okay. So Saturday, Shed Rally was awesome for me.
Really?
Well, actually, okay, let me back up here. Friday, before you and I did our Shed Rally together, I had a pretty dang good Shed Rally.
You did.
Myself.
You found all kinds of cool things.
I'm talking. I think I found 2 kind of older sheds, and I found a match set as well. So if you're following on the Instagram story, you saw those. The match set I was super proud of because those are hard to find. And dude, they were like what, 20 yards from each other?
Yeah. That was cool. I was pretty jelly.
Yeah. So that was good. And then we did our thing. And then Saturday, I wake up and remember that shed I had riding around the truck? Okay. Mm-hmm. I came to a glorious gem of a realization with that shed.
What's that?
I know what buck that is.
Wait, where'd you find that shed?
Found it in Kansas.
Oh, really?
Yep. And
how glorious are we talking here?
I've never known this about this shed because it was part of a big scooping of sheds that we did. This buck is a buck that I shot.
Was this buck a part of the Full Draw Film Tour?
No.
No? Mm-mm. Was this buck...
It was a year before that.
Which buck is that?
Browtine buck.
That's the Browtine buck?
That is the Browtine buck.
How do you know? How can you tell?
Because he's got like a 7-inch Browtine. His G3's longer. And then when I turned him, the reason I realized it is because when I turned him and faced, like, I always like look at him and I try to like picture what their spread would be. Mm-hmm. I turned that side and I looked at it and I was like, that's him exactly. Because that buck has a weird shape when you look at him from the front. And his 2 kind of sticks out this way and his 3 kind of goes in, you know. Mm-hmm. And it's him, no doubt. I took it to the shop where all my mounts are right now. And I just couldn't get back in there to get a picture of it very good with the time that I had. But I was going to bring a picture to show you tonight, but it's him.
That's
like,
crazy.
No doubt.
So he got a lot freakier when you shot him, though, right?
Yeah, a lot older character, and his main beams are way heavier now.
Yeah.
But it's still like a solid 2 or 3 year old buck, you know, and decent brow on that side. That was his shorter brow side, I believe, too.
Okay.
So, but yeah.
How old do you think he was when you shot him?
He was at least 5.
Yeah.
I mean, I couldn't tell you past that. He didn't have a huge body. Mm-hmm. But like I've got some footage of him. He's just a square, you know, he's just a rectangle. But let's see, we had seen him. We had pictures of him in 2012, I believe. He's an 8-point. In 2013, he had a little G4 grow on one side, and he got all busted up like crazy that year. And I actually saw him. I was scouting a field and right before dark one night, and I hear something running towards me down the edge of this field, and I'm not quite on the edge of it, and I'm kind of in the trees, you know. He runs 15 yards from me and stands and looks at me, and he's just huge, man.
Wait, this is the year you shot him?
No, this is 2013, the year before.
Is that the year that Shed's from?
No.
This Shed's older
Justin
than that.
has both sheds.
Oh.
So if you're listening, our buddy Justin Wright that we interviewed in a way earlier episode about, you know, I think the episode's called Defeating a Loss. My buddy Justin, he found both those sheds actually they were about 6 months apart. One was during the fall and one was during the spring shed hunting trip up there. Mm-hmm. And he found them about 300 yards apart. But he's got both sides of those sheds.
Okay, so Steven Spurlock talked about finding sheds close to where you killed deer. How close was that to where you killed the Browtine buck?
The second shed he found, I killed him about 100 yards from there.
That's cool.
Yeah. The first one he found was about 250, probably.
Steven said within 400 yards.
Yeah.
That's cool.
He definitely, that is cool. So anyway, those are his 2013 sheds. They were all busted up. Like I said, he had 9 points. And then at 14, he came back. And, I mean, he's one of those really neat, unique character deer. And he ended up turning out to have lost a point that year. He was an 8. But the reason I say he was at least 5 is because the year before I thought he was at least 5 for sure. And, and I don't think we have a ton of pictures of him from 12. But I know I've got another buddy that has one of his sheds that may be the match to this one, the one that I pulled out the other day and was like, oh, that's him, you know?
That's cool.
So we have actually 4 sheds off that deer.
Man.
And 3 of them were found within about 350 yards of each other.
That's cool.
And also within 300 yards of where I killed him. So,
man, what a story. Like, how cool is it to, like, I know y'all kind of make a habit of having history with deer up there, but not many people have, like, the sheds of bucks they kill. Mm-hmm. You know, like that just, and I guess you have one of, like, the 4 that have been found, but still, like, these are people within your circle that all have sheds to this deer. Right. You know, that's just
it's cool.
Cool, man.
Oh, dude, I love it, man. And Justin, I told Justin that Saturday because I was with him doing a wedding, and he was like, he goes, man, you can have those sheds, dude. And I was like,
okay.
I was like, nah, dude, you keep them. You keep them. But when I come over to your house, I'm going to steal them. So anyway, that was just a cool find. So yeah, shed rally ended up going well for me. It just happened about 7 years ago now.
Wow,
I guess.
cool.
That shed I think we found in 11, I believe.
Yeah.
So
that's awesome, man.
Yeah.
That's cool. And that's, I mean, that whole thing kind of plays into what we wanted to talk about some today, and that's just being who you are.
Yeah.
And where we live, where we exist, where we do our stuff down here in Texas, often we're in Texas at least, kind of our home area, our home range, if you will, core area, bedding area.
Our bed.
We don't always fit the mold, man.
Yeah.
There's this, and I love the mold. Don't get me wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I love watching people in the Midwest slay big deer. It is so cool. And I like to do that some. I aspire to do it, but we just can't do that.
No.
It's just not a thing, man.
It's not just Texas either.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, like, you got the heartland, and then everything else can be quite different.
Yeah, for sure. And it's just, and it's not that we're complaining, but it's just like, what we're saying is we find ourselves trying to do the thing, and sometimes you need to do what you do.
Mm-hmm.
And this time of year, instead of like spending all this time looking for sheds, what I grew up doing was running around shooting hogs with shotguns, and maybe we should get back to doing that a little bit more. Now, don't get me wrong. Definitely. I love finding sheds, but I've found a shed with a shotgun in my hand before chasing hogs, and maybe it's just this world, this hunting world that we live in would probably be even cooler if we all stopped trying to do the same thing and did our thing and shared it with each other.
I mean, that's you're saying it well. The when you become a part of a community, you tend to think alike a lot of times, and that's good sometimes. Like, you get when you're talking about like really promoting public land advocacy or the use of something, or hunter recruitment and retention. Like, these are good things that we all should be on the same page and should preach about together and kind of get people thinking about. But like you said, we're, right now you see, if you're on Instagram, you see turkey pictures. About half of the pictures have a turkey in them. You know what I'm saying? Like, whether it's dead or alive or whatever. And, Instagram is so dumb sometimes. Like, people, it drives me crazy how cliche things can get. And this is part of what we're talking about, like people trying to be other people. And, this is unfortunately, this is kind of the thing, but people have less and less attention span now. So, like, the thing to do, and probably has been for several years now, but I know lately I've seen it a ton, is just to like make like a short comment about your picture that really doesn't say anything about what actually happened in that picture.
Minimalist caption.
Yes. Yeah. Like, I did it just the other day on our page, but sometimes, you just kind of, you go, well, I could tell this story, but I'm not Cameron Haynes, and not, a million people are going to read this thing because I'm Cameron Haynes,
Sure.
So if I just keep it low, people will just give it a quick read and a quick like, maybe, or whatever.
Yeah. If you see a post, like them.
Yeah, exactly. So, but like, I would prefer to tell a story, but there's just, you wonder how well you do it, like, you don't want to be the guy, and there's a guy we were talking about earlier that, like, sometimes maybe he goes a little bit overboard with this story, and for us, that could be a turnoff here and there, whereas, like, Cam tends to say the right thing, like, every time. You're like, for at least us, and everybody's different, but I just you start to kind of catch things that are going on that are just really not yourself. And for us, turkeys being on Instagram right now, it's so enticing, but we don't have any turkey content really. I mean, I've got a long video that I produced in 2013 maybe, where we went to Kansas, and I went with a couple of buddies that and we had two misses on a Jake and a nice big old Kansas Tom.
Just bow misses or
bow
shotguns?
misses?
Yeah.
Yep. And so I've got like quite a bit of content, lots of good time lapses and walking shots and stuff, and then I got like a couple of minutes, or maybe even not even that, of some turkeys coming in. And it's like, man, I could put that stuff out there, but that's, that many years old, and we don't have turkeys where we live. And like, if you haven't heard some of the podcasts we've been doing lately, that may be a shock to you, but, we would like to do some turkey hunting. So, hey, if anybody's got something for free, I mean, you know what I'm saying?
I actually have some news on that front.
Ooh.
So, like we were saying, turkeys aren't us. They haven't been. I'd love for them to be. but it's just not where we live, not what we can do, you know. And I love looking at turkey stuff on Instagram because it's cool, man. It's a cool animal because like it's not about the score, and turkeys are like the like epitome of that. Maybe them and ducks, you know, like birds in general, like they're all about the same size.
Yeah.
And there's some bigger beards or bigger poundage turkeys, but I'm probably not going to weigh my turkeys. I might measure the beard just because I don't know why really, but it's kind of neat, you know. But like, I don't really care to ever like kill a book turkey, you know. It's not a thing. But anyways, I kind of went off on a tangent there. But my point is, I'm not going to like go overboard and try to make the turkey thing happen like I did last year. I did it and kind of like learned a lesson on it, you know, like put a bunch of effort into driving a long ways for kind of a hope and a prayer. And it just wasn't worth it, man. I'd rather stay here and catch fish or something cool. But kind of juxtaposition to that is my granddad loves to hunt turkeys. Like it's he would probably choose turkeys over deer. And my dad and I have kind of been looking around for a place to take him to go turkey hunting this year. He's getting a little bit older and he can still get around great, you know, but like long trips are tough for him. So I think that we found a place in Oklahoma for Pop to go turkey hunt, and I'm going to go video his turkey hunt.
Sweet.
So we're going to be doing that probably early April or something.
Cool.
So we actually might have a little turkey content.
Yeah.
But it's still not like something that we're going to go crazy about because
But
we
it's
don't have to do a
organic.
lot.
It's organic,
It is.
though,
It
you
really is. This is something that my dad wanted to do. My dad, like, I mean, he loves what we do with the element stuff, but like, it's not like, hey, this would be cool to put on the element, you know. But he wants me to film it for the point of like the whole reason you started filming to preserve that memory, you know, because I mean, my granddad's in good health, but he's not going to be here for ever, you know, and this is going to be one of our like probably last really good hunting trips together. So it would be real cool to kind of get this thing done. And the place we're going it's like one of those, I guess you could call it semi-guided. He's got a cabin we can stay in, and then we go out and just do our thing. But he usually has like 100% success rate.
Dude,
so
that's cool.
It's going to be fun, man.
Oh, those are, I mean, and like we've talked about this before, but like the pressure is just not there like it is with deer, you know, and just, man, that's going to be awesome.
I'm pretty pumped about it, really. It's going to be a good time. And it's coming to one of those things where we go up there and do it, and we're like, man, why can't it be like this back home? You know, just wish we had some turkeys, man.
Yeah, man, and you know, it's going to be, like you said, it's going to be one of those things that's special, man. You're going to be glad you have that footage. And, you know, for me, like, one of my granddads is, you know, he's been gone a long time. And the other one just barely can get around. You know, he's sharp mind, but just doesn't get around very good. He's a big man and does not have very good blood circulation because of how long his feet are from his heart, you know, whatever. And so he just his legs just don't work that well anymore, and you know, just don't really have the opportunity. I used to dove hunt with him, you know, both of them, and then my dad's dad, his brother, stayed with us for a while, but he passed away a few years ago. But he was a fishing guy down on Toledo Bend.
Oh, really?
I think back in the 70s. So when my dad was kind of growing up, and so they did a lot of fishing stuff together, you know, and I just didn't really get to go fishing with him later in his life, you know, much either, because he just slowed down so much. And by the time I got done with football, he wasn't really fishing that much anymore. So that's a good opportunity, man, awesome opportunity, and it's going to be cool to have footage of that, man, and just remember it, because, you know, now really what I get to cherish is a picture of us with a bunch of doves in front of us, you know. And
that's cool.
You get that memory, but my memory's not great, so there's parts of it I've surely forgotten, you know. So that's going to be neat, man. What else happened on Shed Rally Weekend for you?
Well, the whole reason I just did Friday is because Saturday morning early, the wife and I took, I think, 15 high schoolers. We, our youth group kids, the high school kids, the ones that were able to go, we took them down to College Station, Texas, to enjoy a little baseball, softball, fellowship, and singing, praising, stuff like that.
Little whooping?
Yeah, a little whooping. I didn't know you knew that. That's cool.
I know
thought you just all about that pony up life.
No, dude.
But
No.
Yeah, so that's where I went to college and where I met my wife, and then we didn't actually start dating until we moved back home. That's another long story. If you see me somewhere, come ask me. I'll tell you all about it. But anyways, it's a place near and dear to our hearts, and it's a place where, like, I'm not going to say I found God, because God has been a part of my life ever since I was little. I was raised in church, but, like,
Had an epiphany.
yeah, it's where, like, I kind of had those college times that you don't really like to talk about much, and then, like, even in, like, your toughest times, God finds you and just shows you the way, man. And so it's a special place for me,
cool,
and
man.
I've got a really good church group down there that I was a big part of for a long time. So I went to go see old friends, and just kind of really the idea behind it is to introduce some kids who may not have opportunities to I guess, consider college, the fact that actually is an opportunity for them. Like, even though maybe you come from a certain household where that's not, like, kind of what you're taught to aspire towards, or that you might not have enough money for it, or whatever the reason might be, that it's still an option. And if you want to pursue that, not that there's anything wrong with not going to college, but if you want to pursue that, the option is there. And then, too, that you don't have to go to college and act like a college kid, like, in quotes, like, there's no reason. And me and Cassie had this talk for a very long time the other night. This whole idea of adolescence, I actually did a lesson on this recently. The whole idea of adolescence is like a human concept.
I think you and I talked about this pretty recently,
Did
too.
we?
I know I've talked about it with somebody recently.
Yeah.
I thought it was you.
Like, the idea that you get to have this time period where you're, like, in the body and a mind of an adult, but you get to act like a kid, is bogus.
Yeah.
Like, that's not the real world.
Right.
But as humans, we've accepted that pretty much from the age of, like, 16 or 17 to 22 or 23 or 24, 28, whatever it might be. You can do these things, but you're still just a kid.
Right.
But you're not.
But not even as humans, though, as Americans in some other cultures.
Yeah.
But then there are cultures in this world, like you saying, that's bogus in that culture. Like, at 13, you go, like, get bit up by some fire ants and you're a man.
Yeah,
and, like,
exactly.
you get married and you go do your thing, you know?
Well, that's how it was in the U.S. until we had this time of prosperity in the 50s when people actually had free time on their hands. Before that, you had to work as soon as you were able-bodied, and then this whole progressive thing happens, not like progressives politically, but just the progression of how things go. Yeah. And sooner or later, people are 22 eating Tide Pods and getting drunk on the weekends all the time, and it's like, what is going on here, But anyways, I don't even know how I got off on that tangent. Just the fact that, like, you don't have to act super irresponsibly the whole time you're in college, or at all when you're in college, Like, you can go to college, be a great person, be an upstanding human,
take care of business.
Yeah.
Get your degree.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you wholeheartedly, man. Like, this probably makes me weird, and I'm going to go ahead and admit this, but, like, I basically spent the majority of my free time in college, either tying flies in my room alone or finding a fishing hole somewhere in Dallas, Texas, which was very hard to do. I mean, I could drive 30 minutes, which would get me about 3 miles from where I was at, and, like, not find anything, And so I was like, there, you go to, like, some corporation or whatever, and they've got, like, a lake out in front, that you saw on the map, and you, like, try to sneak in and, like, get a few casts before somebody comes down the lawn and goes, sir, But
see, that's what I'm talking about. Those juvenile delinquent college kids right here sneaking out places. No, I'm kidding.
Too much free time.
I'm kidding.
Yeah, that's it. But I was lucky enough to kind of be that way. But at the same time, it's tough. Like, socially, that's not. It wasn't easy to be alone. Like, I definitely got homesick big time, especially my freshman year, because like, all my buddies that I hung out with back, here in East Texas. My good buddies, we basically just hung out and sat around on tailgates and had deep talks. I mean, that was what we did, man. Like, we didn't really. There wasn't, like, some club or some bar venue that we could go to. I mean, we're out in the country, So, like I said, we go out and hang out on tailgates or whatever. Not that any of my friends didn't drink or whatever, I mean, that was just. But we were pretty calm about things and pretty chill about things. And so that's kind of like what I did when I got to school. And then where I was at was, even though it's considered a differently via its title, it's pretty much a party school.
Yeah.
And anyway, it was I was definitely an outcast there, and different socially and socioeconomic wise, and many things. So
yeah, and it's kind of a touchy thing for me because I always feel like oftentimes people who are influencing young people use this caveat of like, I did this and it was a mistake, don't do it. But it kind of gives people an alibi to like say that I'm going to make that mistake too, and then I'm going to get
ask for forgiveness.
Ask for forgiveness, which that works with God, and I'm so glad it does. But my point is like I was one of those people who went to college and saw dark times, But I don't tell my youth kids that all the time. We talk about it a little bit, but I don't want them to have like that out there.
Right?
Like, well, you did it, But I guess my point is that I can speak to the fact that I was doing something that wasn't me. I wasn't being myself in that facet of my life either.
Because you talked about this to me, but you, like in high school, you grew up much different than that.
Yeah. I was
good kid.
Yeah, I was sheltered. I didn't drink or anything at all in high school, and it was just kind of 180 when I got to college. I had that freedom, man. It was a weird thing for me, but it all worked out. It all went well. I learned a lot of things, but it's kind of against my point that I made earlier. Like, you don't have to go do that, though.
Right. No, that's absolutely right. I mean, like I learned many things too, and I didn't party in high school or in college. So there really that's what you go to college for, is the experience. I mean, you get a degree, but your degree tells your boss that you learned things outside of school. Really, like everybody can go and be taught, how to do some math or how to balance some kind of spreadsheet or whatever. But I think that you got a good point, and you're talking about just how this kind of goes back to what I was saying. Like, you get into a community, and then all of a sudden you see yourself like not doing what what I'm saying? Like, you go to college and there's this community of people that are freaking nuts,
Yeah. And you get this group think thing going on. And this is a good example. Okay, so this weekend, I love observing our high school kids. Okay, it is so funny to watch them do things sometimes. Like, they're super awkward when they talk to like athletes or something because they think they're so cool. And it's also kind of cool to watch that innocence too. But something that I observed this weekend is that high schoolers will blindly walk places. Like, they have this thing where they want to go fast. They want to go faster than you, and I walk pretty fast. So like they're like chopping out to get in front of me, but they don't know where we're going. Yeah. And like, there will be high schoolers that are like 100 yards in front of me walk into this baseball field. They don't know which field it is. There's athletic complexes everywhere. And then I just take a left and just let them go. Yeah. I tell them every once in a while, but sometimes they just need to learn. They're like, hey, just stay behind the person who knows where they're going. Right. It's just funny to watch them blindly go places, And I feel like we all can fall victim to that, in much greater ways,
Sure,
you just and I've had to look at that, and we're such big proponents of like public land stuff. You got on TRCP hat on right now, and I just washed my BHA shirt while I go in the wash machine. We are public land, to a T. But there's things that come up in legislation and all that kind of stuff that I always make sure now to read what it's actually saying, because I never want to be fooled. Man, we talked about this some recently with Garrett Long. Actually, it's been a little while, but the National Monument stuff, and Yvon Chouinard, the Patagonia guy, or it was said to be him. At least Patagonia made the statement that the president just stole your land, and when I read it, I was like, golly, that's terrible. But then when you look it up, it's not what happened at all. It's just one of those situations where, like, if you fall into the groupthink and, like, these people are doing a lot of things that you really agree with, that doesn't mean that, like, there's not going to come up something every once in a while that you need to do a little fact checking on, make sure that you actually believe what they're saying. Yeah. I
mean, I kind of said this on the BHA podcast we did recently, I think we were talking about TRCP, and I'm like, I don't know if I necessarily vote the same way a lot of these people do, sure. but we love these few things together, and we can work on that cause together in a lot of places. But you still and this is a great point that you're making, because this is what it all boils down to. This whole podcast that we're talking about, we're being super opinionated and we're throwing out all these different things. Like, this is what it all boils down to, is that you have to think for yourself and decide then if you fit in that community and how often and that sort of thing. But you have to understand, and this is something I went through, or similarly went through, I guess, in the last few years when the band kind of dissipated or whatever. I really did a lot of, like, what is the meaning of this? Like, what's the meaning of my life? What's the meaning of pursuing anything at all? You know, like worldly, especially. You know, what are the, like? And these can be so deep, and they took a lot of time, and I still think about stuff like this. But like, if you're listening and you like what we're doing, you like what the Element does, or BHA, or you know, TRCP, or Steve Ranella, whatever. You think that guy's like, you know, the cat's meow. That's great. And I mean, I think that about a lot of things too. But you need to step back. If you haven't, in my opinion, you need to step back and you need to start with just like, what is your meaning in life? You know, like, you've got to first come up with like, what is the point of this? And, you know, for me, and like we were talking about this earlier off the air, like, we're not sitting here trying to preach, but we're just being ourselves. And so I'm talking about how I feel. But like, for me, when I was going through all this thinking, it always came back around to like, is this a sin, basically? So like, is it a sin for me to want to be making money playing music so bad? You know, and like, I mean, I was pretty, you know, straight-laced on tour and stuff, you know, like, it wasn't about partying and girls and, you know, all these things that a lot of guys kind of get into it for. Like, I really love music so much that all I wanted to do was like have a job where I can make money doing that. And so but you have to look at that and like idolization of things, you know, and stuff. So like, I had to break it down to like that, basically, every time I thought about what I should do with something and like, where should my career path go now, you know? And so, and I feel like right now I'm in a pretty good place. Like, I've started to kind of figure out some of these things, and like, it wasn't just like I think about it and then I come up with a solution. Like, it would take weeks sometimes for me to like start to even grasp what I'm reaching for, you know? So like, like I said, if you're listening to this and you're like a big fan of the Element podcast or whatever, man, you know, first start off with like, you know, make sure that you have at some point in your life started to, and you may even reevaluate now, like, what is the purpose of me being here and what should I do with that? And, you know, for me, it all boils down to my beliefs. And so it's not really necessarily about me and what I want or what I think. For others, it may be. But anyway, that's like what it breaks down to. And then you can go into like, oh, how do I feel about this moral you know, value or situation or whatever. And then it goes into like, how do I feel about this piece of legislation, like you talked about earlier? Like, is that really what I believe, you know? And then, you know, what is it trying to say, and all these different things that come in. And so it just gets from a huge, like, deep thing, it comes narrower and narrower. And then you can just, once you have your base, you can have all these tangents that you start to decide on based off of your base and your foundation, you know? So that's kind of like what I've been through lately and how I feel about these things, you know? I mean, you have to start with a foundation for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. You figure out who you are, and then you can apply who you are to the current events.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah, exactly, man. So, man, let's get off of the deep stuff for a second here and talk about fishing a little bit, because that's been on my mind a lot lately. And I don't know if you heard, but we have another lunker from Lake Fork, Texas.
Really? Like a legit lunker?
A legit 13.06, I believe.
Ooh, barely.
Yeah.
Dang.
The last one was 13.00.
Wait, there's been one since the 15?
There have been 3 this year.
Dang.
In the last basically week and a half, I believe.
13.00?
13.00.
Dude, if that fish would have sat in the live well like another minute.
If he'd have lost a drop of water on the way to the scale.
No kidding. Wow.
Yeah. So I mean, that's one of those things. Like he could have had too much water on the scale with him or whatever. You know, I mean, but either way,
Still,
it's a giant fish. Yeah,
Yeah.
And so we have out of Lake Fork this year, which I don't know if there's been any other sharelunkers yet this year. Which I mean, that's just the way Fork has always been dominant. But we had a 15.5, basically 15.48, a 13, and a 13.06 so far this year, and that's been in the last like 10 days.
And that's a lot for early.
Oh yeah.
You know, normally they're coming late March, early April. I think.
Yeah. That's the peak time for sure. But we had a lot of rain, and I think that the like mud or silt content within the water has like it just amplifies the like warming of the water when the sun hits that, and it just reflects the sun in every direction. You know, I think it warms up faster that way. So I don't know if that has something to do with it. I do know. I believe the 15 was caught on full moon.
Yeah.
So that's if you were to go and try to correlate that over the years.
But 2 13s weren't.
Yep.
So there's that.
Oh, for sure. Just Fork is a freak, man, as far as that goes.
Man, I know you can do things to, make it, I guess, more in your favor, but at the end of the day, one of the biggest fish I ever caught was caught on a crappie jig.
Yeah.
So, it's just about having a hook in the water.
Was it even caught on a jig? Because I thought it was caught on a minnow.
Well,
crappie fishing.
Okay.
It was crappie fishing either way.
It's crappie fishing. There is some discrepancies on what actually might have happened.
Yeah. Oh, I've heard pretty good evidence that there was a 15 caught several years ago on a crappie.
Yeah, well, that's what I've heard about that fish too. And there's no way to tell, but there's some big bass down there smoking some panfish.
Yep.
I mean, we fish for them with bluegill patterns all the time.
Yeah,
they're probably eating crappie too.
Oh, they are definitely
doing it.
Yeah, I've seen it happen, and it wasn't even a 10-pounder.
I had an 8-pounder try to, assumed 8, try to eat a crappie one time.
Yeah,
and a big one would do it too.
It's so fun,
dude. It is so cool. Okay, I know the world loves artificial baits.
Yeah.
But it is cool to me to throw a live bluegill out and watch a bass just chase it down. This one time, so when I was young, we did this a lot. We called them pool perch, but bluegills, any type of sunfish, we'd catch those pumpkin seeds.
Yeah.
And those are my favorite to use. I just thought since they were colorful, they were the best.
Well, they're also bite-sized.
Yeah, exactly. They're the right size, man. And they seem to be a little bit more hyperactive than most. They got a little bit of a fast twitch to them. Mm-hmm. And I love to throw them out underneath a bobber about 5 or 6 foot. And, dude, this one time, we were in the lily pad cove, and, you just see your bobber go right and left. It didn't go under, and you're like, what's going on? And all of a sudden, this pumpkin seed just goes airborne. Literally 5 feet in the air. I don't know if it was that much, but it seemed like it. And there was about a 6-pounder right behind it.
Dude.
In the air. I can still picture it in my mind. It's one of those perfect evenings in the summer.
Yeah.
A summer storm had just blown through, and how it gets that smell after the rain on the lake, and then everything slick as glass, but it's not hot because you still got that cloud cover, and that rain just cooled the ground. So it's probably low 90s or something like that, which is not hot in the summer here. That's pretty nice. And man, and the sun was halfway set. It was just, dude, that was a cool. And the bass ended up catching it too. I caught the fish.
Yeah.
So it's just ingrained in my memory.
Oh, dude,
it's beautiful.
It's a great moment.
Yeah.
I've had some of my best moments have been on the lake, and I think that's a lesson to probably take, man, is that wherever you are, there can be moments like that made, you know? I mean, you got to try to find beauty in where you're at. Mm-hmm. And, man, there's been some good sunsets on Lake Fork, man.
Oh, yeah, dude, for sure. It's something about just being out there on the lake, man. Just the sun is just cooler.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just because there's not as much trees around and you can see more of it. It probably has something to do with it. But
I mean, you can't. There's not a whole lot of places that you can see the sun when it gets down that last low part, you know. And this is on a lake, on the ocean, in the Great Plains. A lot of times you can see it for its last few minutes of actually being above the horizon, whereas in treed up or mountain country, you can't really do that. So it's dude, man, it's cool. I love this time of year on Fork. Just the excitement. There's always this just buzz going around, and you got bass boats flying by all the time.
Dude, you got these $120,000 rigs driving by, red trucks with red boats.
You know,
and they're beautiful.
I believe they have a Legend boat that's selling for $100 now.
I could see it. Talk about a beautiful rig, dude.
Yeah,
man.
So you throw like a $70,000 jacked up Ford F-350 on the front of that, and that's a lot of what's coming out of Dallas.
Man, oh man, they're pretty. It's just one of those things. I'd never do it, but it's cool.
Okay, are you talking about trucks? Or are you talking about the whole rig?
The whole rig.
Okay, well, this morning I am not a car guy, man.
Yeah.
It's like I have no clue. If my truck starts doing anything weird, I'm like, oh my. I think my gas is going out or something. I don't have a clue, So, but I was looking at those. I think those square body Silverados, man, from like the '80s are so sweet.
They're pretty sweet, man. You know what would be cool? Okay, my all-time favorite boat, Gambler. You know what I'm talking about? Those Gamblers, dude. Yeah. They were blinging hardcore. Like a bunch of glitter.
Yeah,
and they were awesome, man. Like a square body Silverado, red and white, with a Gambler, red and white. Can you imagine?
Dude, it'd be straight up 1984. Man.
Winning the classic with Bill Dance style. That would be cool.
That would be cool. So it's a great time of year just to be where we're at, because you just get to feel the buzz of people, and everything, and it's just this excitement, and you never know when the big one's going to come out. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure it's like living in the southeast Iowa or whatever, in the November, when all of a sudden it's like you never know who on the farm 2 farms away is going to kill a giant.
Or all the big names in the industry are rolling into your hometown because it's where the giant deer live,
Yeah, and that's what we've got here. It's just neat to be around, and you and I have talked about the struggles of being around it too, and that's probably for a different podcast, but man, it's a good time of year, and really, like right now, all I want to do is catch a bunch of crappie. I want to go catch a bass, don't get me wrong, but it's tough with that many people hitting the lake. But the crappie are a little bit tastier as well, and I got a buddy who's caught some recently, but
I got a buddy who went today, and they didn't do any good at all, and he knows his spots too. So it's just still hit or miss, just because the temperatures are still. We had a cold night,
and wind bad this weekend too. So well, I'm excited. I'm excited to do some fishing. We're going on a trip here in the next probably couple weeks to do some bass fishing of a different kind, and we'll kind of refrain from giving too much away there, but we'll have a recap of that trip when we get back, and we're excited to do that. We'll hopefully have a little film there. But moving on, man, we've got here in Texas, and I know, like, if you're listening from somewhere outside of Texas, then you might get tired of this. But we're definitely involved and concerned about things that go on in our home state, and we have a lot of Texas listeners that probably are too. So I want to keep them informed real quick and just go through a few things. We've got some proposed regulation changes coming up here pretty soon that are liable to go one way or another, and they're open for public comment right now. And so if you look in the notes below, you'll see a link to a page that you can give your public comment to. So make sure and go do that either way, if you agree with me or not, or KC, So we've got a couple of things that we're interested in, and some things that I'm not too worried about, but really all I looked at so far have been the deer regulations. And since this is a majority, the things we talk about here are deer, we'll talk about those.
Yeah, but I've looked at the other ones a little bit. Texas Parks and Wildlife did a live Facebook event the other day, which we both watched. I watched the whole thing. I think you missed part of it. There's nothing really all that controversial about, especially the fishing stuff. It's just kind of like some proposed regulation changes on like slot limits on specific lakes. So it's not very applicable statewide, And then there's a couple other things too. I'm leaving some stuff out, of course. And then like they're saying you could shoot 1 or 2 pintails instead of 1. Like we're probably all cool with that.
I mean, shooting 1 is like a good day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Now, you talk about a decoy shy duck just in general.
Yeah, especially by the time they get to Texas.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In my experiences, they're tough, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. But go ahead. So the deer stuff is kind of like the thing that we wanted to concentrate on.
Exactly. And there kind of seems like some of the bigger legislation that they're looking at is the actual deer stuff.
Yeah, which makes sense. It's the biggest. It's the it's the moneymaker in Texas.
For sure.
Yeah.
So one of the big things they're doing that we're excited about is they're going to have a congruent season between the South and the North. And so the biologists have considered that this, and they have figured out that there's like no biological reason that this should be a problem. Like we said earlier, we were out in March 9th and no deer had shed, that we saw. So that we could tell. So they're not worried about people knocking down shed bucks in January here.
Yeah. Which is funny because one of my friends shot a shed buck this year on our doe hunt.
Really?
Yeah. It was like a 3-year-old. But didn't have any other deer with it to compare it to, and just looked like a doe. But
that's south. That's in the South.
Yeah, in the
season
South.
Anyway.
But
right?
yeah. So like it was still. It was still legit either way, you know. But what was interesting is that deer had a big puncture wound underneath the skin.
Oh, okay.
So he was sick.
I remember you telling me that.
Yeah.
Yep.
But anyways, go ahead.
So
sorry.
anyway, they're gonna match the seasons up, which is gonna give us here in the North an extra 2 weeks, I believe, which would have been huge for us this year because we had drought pretty heavy in like all of our like agriculture which is not a lot, but if we have agricultural fields in some of our spots or areas or whatever, like we really didn't get a chance to hunt any deer moving to agricultural fields this year because of the drought.
Yeah.
But we go out ever since then that we've gone out and looked just anywhere. The giant that I sent you pictures of the other day on that place that I would like to get permission, they were just hammering it at like 12 p.m.
Yeah. It's crazy how like the end of the deer season kind of marked like, oh, okay, it's time to go bed to feed now.
Yeah. It's like everything's finally, 3 inches of green wheat or ryegrass, So like that's kind of a big deal for us, and I'm excited to see that happen. The biologists are saying that they see like some really low percentage of harvests are coming after the December 31st anyway or whatever. Because people after Christmas just get fat and lazy and full of cookies, and
it's cold,
and it finally gets cold.
For us down here, if you got to go hunt when it's 30 degrees, that's pretty chilly, and people don't like that very much. I didn't like it this year too much myself. But what's cool is that we're not actually, it's not like they're scooting the season, like we're actually adding weeks. So we're not losing anything off the front end.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty cool. And like, I'm all about things that increase hunter access and hunter opportunity, and that's one of those things, man.
Yeah. So speaking of hunter opportunity, probably at least in my circle, the most controversial and the most just kind of big deal regulation proposal change would be the air guns and air bows. Yeah. What do you think about that?
Okay, so let's start with air guns because I think that's different than air bows. Okay. I still am not a fan of the big game harvest with an air rifle. And here's why. Well, let me tell you what I am a fan of. I think it's fine to hunt rabbits and squirrels with an air rifle. I don't have a problem with that. I feel like you're using a similar caliber to what you would with a 22. These new air rifles, hunting style ones, can produce some pretty high FPS, some pretty good ballistics, and it can get the job done. And it would, I think, truthfully, increase some hunter opportunity on rabbits and squirrels for kids who are young and may not like the crack of a rifle or something like that, and
recoil,
just recoil and that sort of thing, and let them get more or able to get in the woods. Okay, that is the one thing that I do kind of like. When you start talking about bringing air guns and air bows into the world of big game, I see no realm, and I might be wrong on this. This is my personal opinion. I see no realm where someone has a air bow sitting around their house like, man, I wish I could use this in deer season. Now, there probably is a few people, don't get me wrong, because there's people who buy things because they think they're cool. Okay?
Like what you're saying is, if I could just use this, then I would go.
Then I would go. Yeah. Yes, that's not true. I believe this is 100% a ploy by manufacturers to introduce something else in the realm of hunting in Texas so that people will spend money on it. And I think that people will spend money on it because people in Texas and people elsewhere too, but we seem to be kind of like the leaders of these bad ideas sometimes in this state. But people in general and hunters in general like tech. They like new things. That's a new thing. that somebody will buy and spend money on because they think it's cool, because maybe their favorite TV celebrity is doing it. And there's a TV celebrity or two that I really like, which use airbows sometimes, and it just kind of blows my mind. But
Well, I mean, if you pay me enough,
yeah, sure.
you know what I'm saying? And that's to your point. Like, industry is probably the reason this is a proposed regulation change. You know?
And y'all tell me if I'm wrong, and that I'm seeing this wrong, but I just don't see a world where having an airbow season is going to get more hunters in the woods or give hunters more places to hunt.
Yeah. Here's the thing. The world where that happens is if you say that is a legal means of take during archery season, in my opinion. That gets the guys that don't want to put in the work, learning how to shoot a bow, the opportunity to throw darts out there, basically.
Yeah, but what is archery season? What is it at that point?
Oh, it's not archery.
I'm not
season.
saying that you're.
I'm
that's
I'm
your
with you.
point.
I'm exactly with you. Yeah, like, and so this is my point, is that when I read the proposal change and I submitted my comments today, they stated that there are 7 states that currently are allowing some method of air gun or air bow, and I don't know if air bow was actually in the statement, but air gun at least, as a take. And that it said that these states only use it during rifle season. But it didn't say anything about, in our proposed regulation change, whether we're going to only allow these during rifle season or if we're going to put them in archery season too. And so the ambiguity of those statements gave me a real weird feeling about this thing.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so, I mean, in my comment, I basically told the parks that I was like, look, archery season is for guys who have like a 40-yard and in range. It's a handicap, so to speak, that we enjoy. We have, if we don't have a time period where the woods are quiet and there's not like air guns going off and stuff.
Yeah, because they are as loud
they're very loud.
A rifle.
Yeah, they're very loud. If we don't have that time period before and I also made the point that our rifle season is 60 plus days on, depending on what zone you're in. Like, we basically have the first weekend of November until, they're going to pass the regulation, I'm sure, with extending the season this year. So you're looking at like 75 days of of gun season, and it's high-powered, high-caliber rifles, like in Texas. Can we not get 30 days of just a little peace and quiet during the hot 95-degree October,
Us and the ticks, man.
Yes. And so I'm pretty against that. And like KC said, if you guys have a good point, man, I want to hear it. I want you to send a Facebook message or an email through the website or an Instagram message and just let us know, like, hey, y'all are missing this, But as I see it, man, I just cannot. The only opportunity that it would create is for somebody who doesn't want to learn how to shoot a bow to come in with basically a gun that shoots darts.
Sure. And you and I have talked about this before, and it's the law now, and it's kind of become commonplace. But the crossbow thing, it's call it what you want, but it ain't really archery, And I'm not saying I would be above shooting something with a crossbow, but whenever you're able to shoot a 4-inch group at 100 yards, from something you buy from the store with little to no training, it ain't the same, man. And I know that there's probably some trad guys out there, traditional bow guys, that are saying, well, you got a 7-pin sight on your bow and can shoot a hog at 80 yards. Like, yeah, it's true, but I don't do that on whitetail, But I don't know.
Here's another thing is that with that being said, like, I feel like there maybe should be a clause where, like, it's like if you're youth of some sort, 13 and under, I don't know, and if you're handicapped, like, I'm fine. Like, if a guy went over, especially like think a veteran or something,
that's increasing opportunity.
Yes, but if you're an able-bodied citizen, like, you're
just lazy.
Yes, you should, like, if you're not going to learn, then you should have to wait until the rut anyway.
Okay, so let's. I'm going to give you a devil's advocate thing here. Okay. What if you're a bad shot, and that's your thing? What if you just can't do it? What if you're just wobbly and you just don't have good vision or something, but you don't really have a legal handicap? I
mean, that's a good point, but I think you got to practice more.
Yeah.
And then if you just like practice and you can't until you can't do it, then you may just need to wait till rifle season and
or shoot
like
something closer. Okay, so
or shoot something closer.
I'm gonna just kind of answer myself here. Like with most modern equipment, there's really no reason why you can't shoot a bow accurately to 20 yards.
Yes.
It's just the way it is. And another thing that they're deregulating in Texas, which I think is a good idea, is the poundage thing, right?
I don't know. I saw a crossbow poundage. I don't know.
Okay, it's crossbow, but then they're talking about broadheads. Like there's no restriction on with the broadhead or whatever. Okay, so technology has gotten to the point now to where like we don't need these lethality restrictions, right? So like we don't need things telling us that your bow has to do this or your arrows have to do this to be lethal because they're all that way now, right?
Right. But here's the one thing with that is, and here's the other side, in my opinion, is like, well, what about the like new hunter who thinks that those little screw-in tips that the archery shop put on his bow are for killing things?
I thought about that too. A field point.
A field point is not the most lethal thing.
No, I mean it could kill something. And
definitely
don't shoot yourself with one. But it's
Yeah.
But,
so like, I mean, do you still need that at least to be put in the regulations? Like how is it going to hurt you to say like we need a broadhead that's 7/8 inches? Whatever, 2-blade. I mean, like, yeah, you probably don't need to say that, but like,
well, I think it might be like an industry standards thing too. So like industry standards dictate that broadheads have a higher, that much of a width. So like the state law doesn't have to require it, but you still have the point where you're saying we're like, okay, well, there are things that screw in the end of your bow that aren't broadheads at all. You can't shoot something with a Judy point and hope that a deer dies.
Exactly. Yeah. And so like all of this being said, like we've got the air guns, we've got the air bows, we've got the broadhead like lethality questions here, or not lethality questions, but like, do we need to lay this out for people like what they actually need to use? So all that being said, the question, you've got the question like whether you need this in the book or not. And I feel like it's just kind of one of those things that's kind of lazy because like people they're still going to tell people like you can't shoot a whitetail with a 22 long rifle because it's not very lethal. Like you can kill one probably pretty easy with a good shot, but if you miss much at all, like you're not going to find that deer probably. Sure. You may die still, but like, anyway, it's just kind of one of those things like, are we just doing this because the ATA just brought something up to us and said, hey, do we really need to spell this out for people, or can we just be advocates of correct hunting, proper etiquette and use and stuff? So like, I just don't know. Like in my opinion, there's going to be, like, there will probably be a guy out there that is really struggling to find any information about like that and may end up as a new hunter just plopping one out there with a field tip,
Yeah, and not to make fun of that guy because we've all been there, didn't know what we were doing about stuff, know? I mean, I can remember finger shooting a bow without a peep sight with pins on it, when not that it was like back in the day when that's what you did. It's just I didn't, I saw people shooting bows with the fingers. That's what they did,
Oh, I can remember when I first picked up a fly rod. I can remember not knowing that you didn't let the line fall in the water every forward cast. So I would like whoosh, onto the water, back up, onto the water, back up. I just thought that's how you did it.
Yeah, well, I remember. Yeah, well, anyways, yes, you're right. We can keep on going with this. I remember stuff, but. Gosh, okay, so you're going to like this. Okay. Some of this stuff that we're talking is very important as far as like regulation changes. Some of it is a good idea, but not really important. I like generalizations when they make it easier for hunters. Now, it's not always a good thing because, like, for instance, I'm concerned about making the whole state the same for hunting seasons. Because we have so many different regions in our state. How can the deer all be the same? And that's a complete different podcast and probably something that's kind of out of our realm because we're not biologists. But I just can see a world where how on earth can it be the same everywhere in a state this big? But I'm also excited about the 2 or 3 weeks of extra deer season. Okay, but some of it's just plain petty. like the broadhead stuff. Like, why not just leave it in there? You're going to save like 3 cents every 1 million copies of the Texas Outdoor Annual. You see it by saving on ink. Like, what's the point in this? But and this is what you're going to like. What I'm disappointed in is that within the past 2 years, CWD has gotten to our state, and it is a scary, scary thing, okay? And it's all over the state. They found it in Mississippi the other day. It's coming from the other direction, too. It's south. It's in central Texas. How on earth it got there without spreading, I don't know, but I might have an idea. But there's not one thing in these proposed regulation changes that has anything to do with transporting wildlife, check stations, or anything like that. We're talking about a disease that could literally wipe out the population of whitetail in our state in 10 years. And we're not going to talk about it once in proposed regulation changes. What's going on?
So we talked about this a little bit already, but the airbows, that regulation proposal change comes from an industry. Mm-hmm. I mean, I cannot see how it wasn't brought up by the makers of airbows. Like this has been brought to Parks and Wildlife.
I don't know, man. They might be picketing down in Austin trying to get them airbows on the steps of the Capitol.
They might be.
We just don't know.
That's true, but I think that's one thing. You've got the ATA bringing up the petty broadhead and
that's an assumption, right? You don't know that for sure.
No, that's what they said
in the ATA.
When I went through and was submitting comments. They say, here's the proposal, and then they say this is kind of their reasoning or whatever, why. And they say ATA did a study where they went through all 50 states and, like, you know, tried. And so, like, the ATA is trying to promote, like, archery education, essentially, and say that, like, through this education, we don't need those rules in our booklets. But, you know, like, so anyway, that's an industry, though, you know, like these are industry proposed, and CWD, the only industry that really has a lot to do with that, other than the entire hunting industry, I guess should be in opposition, but the high fence industry, and they're going to keep it on the hush hush. They're not going to say anything about it. And I mean, where are the individuals speaking up about this? I mean, we're speaking up right now, but like, well, proposals for 2018-19 seasons are happening now. They've already been submitted. So, like, I don't know. How do you submit that? This is something, in my opinion, that, and we've been kind of closely working with backcountry hunters and anglers here in Texas, and I think this is something that backcountry hunters and anglers, I know they try to work within their mission statement. And I don't know. Do you know that offhand? I don't want to butcher it.
I know.
It has to do with opportunity, right?
Yeah. So, backcountry hunters and anglers, I'm going to give you the gist of what I understand. They fight for anything that is for the betterment of wildlife, or something that's going to go against wildlife, or hunter access or hunter opportunity. Okay, and Land Tawny, the president CEO, I think that's what he's called, right? He has like these things he calls buckets, and whether something falls in a certain buckets, he combines them every once in a while and splits them every once in a while. So you never know what exactly. But if you want to learn more, go to backcountryhunters.org, and you'll learn all about their mission statement. But
so this is something, in my opinion, that we need to, like, that backcountry hunters and anglers needs to say something about it. And the reason I say that, more than anything, I'm a member, but we did a podcast with Abe and his crew recently, and those guys are really involved. Abe is, I believe, the secretary here in Texas. And then, Jeff and Jared, like, these are guys that are heavily involved here in Texas BHA. And these are guys that I know just from knowing them and talking to them, having conversations with them, that they care about this issue. And so we've got a bunch of Texas backcountry hunters and anglers members and volunteers that care about this issue. I mean, I feel like it's just natural that we should have a voice there. So, like, I guess my whole point is, can we get, if you, I know a few of you guys from BHA, Texas BHA are listening to this thing. If you are hearing this, can we get some kind of, how do we submit a proposal for the next year to be looked at? You know what I'm saying? Like, I know how I know how to go out and find the link to give public comment on these proposals of rule change. But how do we propose that a rule be changed?
Yeah, it's a whole lot easier to get something done from the beginning as opposed to like rebuke something that's already taking motion.
Yeah, exactly. It'd be like, well, we don't want no air bows, but let me tell you something that's even more important than that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it is, man, for sure. But that's I think that's the thing is that we don't have it organized. I've said this several times. Said it on the BHA podcast we did a couple weeks ago. That we don't have an organized fight against CWD right now, in my opinion. There's not a concerted effort that's like, this is what you put your money into that's going to be used for research, and this is what, like, everybody wants to join BHA because it's cool, you know, and like they're doing good things and we're enjoying public lands and stuff. I mean, how do we find something like that everybody wants to join and get behind this cause? I mean, does it really have to get to the point where everybody has CWD, you know?
Dude, I'm going to be honest with you. I think that CWD is sometimes a skeleton in the closet of hunters. I think that we don't want it, but I think a lot of people, like, in the back of their minds, really don't want to go through the effort of going through all that testing stuff and carrying deer to check stations. No one likes regulation. No one likes more government interference, you know. But this is the boat we're in now, you know. And there's holes in the bottom, and we can plug them, or we can kind of ignore them and just keep trying to get shore. You know, like it's not going to work. So, and I also think that there are some things that hunters, high fenced and non high fenced alike, might do that can help spread CWD. I'm not going to say it does, but you know, it comes from deer that are in close contact. And when you put a pile of corn on the ground, deer get in close contact sometimes, you know, and I think it's scary especially for Texans, a feed state, to think about that, you know, and I'm not saying that we need to stop feeding because I have a deer feeder in my backyard right here, you know, like I'm all about it. But at the same time, you know, sometimes you have to do things that you don't want to do for the greater good. And so I think that, and I'm not saying that this is the case. It's just kind of what I wonder, and maybe it's partially a reflection of my own self. The fact that I might have to make a few sacrifices if we really start getting deep in the CWD stuff, and it's kind of scary to think about having to do that.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's popping up, like I said, all over the place, and I keep reading NDA articles. I mean, it's like every day on my news feed, it's like something about CWD, and it's kind of depressing. I mean, frankly, it is depressing, and I don't know, but we need to try to do something about it. Like there has to be something that we can do about it, and I'm not saying there's a cure necessarily, but the positive side of me wants to think there is. We need more than a few $100s to be in research or whatever it is. You know, not that there may be $100,000 worth of research going on right now. I don't know, but you know, we need more. We need somehow, like, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's part of license sales, which I don't know how that'd be organized exactly, but something needs to happen where we have money going into research.
Give me a CWD endorsement. Let me buy it.
Yeah.
You know, $5.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. Like a trout tag or, you know, habitat endorsement stamp or whatever, you know? Yeah.
I don't know. But the general point of that whole topic was think about the cognitive effort that was put into the airbow thing and how much I'm sure that took to get to where it's at. And we didn't do anything about CWD this time around.
Yeah.
You know?
That'll make you feel bad.
Yeah.
So let's get something organized. Let's do something about it. Let's open up that discussion and get the state thinking a little more about it. You know, in my opinion, I think the state and the majority of people want there to be something. They want talks about it, and they want to do something about it, and they want to put these big farms on freeze, you know. But man, there's a lot of money in it. And
Oh, yeah.
when you do anything against money, you're going to lose pretty much, you know. So
and we all need money, you know. Like it's just a part of life. So we don't need to just like shut things down, right? And we don't want people to lose their jobs or whatever. But you got to find a way to make things work.
Yeah.
And I think we can do it. I do. I just think that more people using whatever platform they have and having the talks about it and figuring out. And if you're a biologist and you got a cool idea, talk to us because we don't have the ideas.
Exactly.
We just want something. We want a effort to get behind.
Yeah, and man, don't, you know, like I saw was it the Mississippi case where he actually watched a deer die?
Yeah.
Okay, so they talked about how like this man was courageous because he didn't have to report it, but he did, and he knew, or I don't know if he knew, but either way, he did it, and he's now like death threats are coming to him. And stuff. You know, I don't know if it's death threats, but like people are just mad at him, you know, because now rules are going to change and things are going to happen and seasons and bag limits and transportation, all that is going to change in that area. So that guy's probably not a very famous guy or a very liked guy, at least in that area. But, and so like you said, if you're a biologist and you got something, you know, like, are you going to stand up and make a difference in the world, or are you going to sit back and just go, well, I'm going to keep my job, you know? Like at some point, man, you have a chance to like be courageous. You have a chance to change the world for the better, man. And any biologist I know has hunted or loves to hunt, or you know has at some point in their life. You know, I mean, man, save the sport, or not the sport. You know, I hate to say it that way, but save the activity that you grew up loving so much. You know,
yeah, exactly. And I've heard Ranello say this a lot, but nobody really liked Roosevelt back when he was doing the stuff he did.
Yeah.
And then one day they carved his face on a mountain. You know, so like things can change. And I'm sure the guy in Mississippi, there probably is some people that are upset with him. But I'm proud of that guy.
Yeah.
I don't know his name, but I'm proud that he was like that good, that cared that much about wildlife that he knew that there would be. I'm assuming he was somewhat educated on, you know, deer sickness or something like that, and knew that like, hey, this could change stuff.
Yeah,
so,
great characters shown there. You know, I guess kind of wrapping this thing up. The last thing I would say about these regulations proposals. Is that they've talked about this? We've had this 13-inch rule. It's happened. It's been a dozen years or more, hasn't it, since we've had this rule?
Oh, the antler restrictions.
Yeah. So it's an antler restriction. It's basically your deer's got to be 13 inches wide, or have an unbranched antler. One unbranched antler, so he can be like, you know, a spike on one side, or be 13 inches wide if he's got multiple points. So I have not been a very big fan of this, and I may have disclosed this in some you know past podcasts, but I don't know if I've talked about it too much in detail. You know, we have a buck. We may have said this already. We have a buck that we had on camera all year this year, and a couple times during the fall the year before. Sorry, all year this past off season. So all the way through the summer this year before the season, and he stopped showing up in like September. So we don't know if he just moved out after velvet or whatever. But this deer is for sure 5 years old, and he's like 12 inches wide probably. I mean, he's so close that he's not worth shooting. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, he's worth shooting.
I mean, yeah.
But it ain't worth the risk.
It's not worth the risk of shooting. So, like, you've got this deer that is likely 6 and
an absolute toad.
Just a monster body, you know, big antlers. Like, he's a
lot of mass.
Fully mature deer, very massive. But, you know, like most people are not going to shoot this deer and risk it, especially on public land where you've got, you know, people, you know, there's people know that there are all kinds of state employed people around, you know, that are going to see, oh, so-and-so got a deer, did you check it in, you know, kind of deal. So you've got that issue. And then you say this all the time, like, you in November on Facebook, there's going to be some 2 and 3 year old bucks dead on your Facebook because, you know, some guy knew he would go 15 inches wide, you know. and he's just a pencil horn little body, you know, and was running around being stupid or whatever. And so, like,
we're talking about the deer, not the guy.
Yeah, the deer, exactly. And so, anyway, you know, like, how are we really doing a lot for the age structure? Well, yeah, I think we have. I think, you know, we've all seen the bigger deer in our area, but I don't know if, I know that's the probably like underlying motive behind this rule, but they talk about it as age structure. Both things have gotten better. But man, I typed out a pretty long response on this comment section, and I talked about how, like, in my opinion, and this, you know, like, you guys, like I said, message us, let us know, comment, whatever, if we're crazy or we're thinking along the right lines here. But in my opinion, I should be able, as a hunter, to shoot that deer. Okay, so first of all, let me give you the rule. The rule is that's being proposed is that if you shoot a deer and he is not 13 inches wide, a multi-tine deer that's not 13 inches wide, that you don't get to shoot another buck basically that year, I believe is how it was worded. I'm not exactly sure. You don't get to shoot.
So let me clarify because I don't understand for sure. The current penalties would still be in place, and then on top of that, you can't shoot another buck?
Yes, you would still get
a fine.
You'd still get a fine. And
so it's not it's not like they're giving you a different punishment. They're just adding something to it.
Yeah, they're basically saying, like, in most of these counties, I think you get $2. Mm-hmm. So one of them has to have a spike on one side, essentially. So you don't get to shoot. I believe you don't get to shoot that other buck if you shoot this deer. So it's kind of like an extra penalty or whatever. Like, if you mess up, you don't get to take another buck out or whatever.
Yeah.
And I may be wrong there. We're not fact checking right now because we're trying to have a conversation. But we may fact check that and have a response at some point. But anyway, so I just don't like the rule in general. And so I went through and I said, look, I think that if this buck, like, I told him basically, like, we have trail camera pictures of several deer over the years that were fully mature, 4, 5, 6 years old, you know, that are deer that people would celebrate if they were 15 inches wide and 135 inches of antler, you know. But this deer may be, you know, just an old 8-year-old downhill 7-point, you know, that's just doesn't have a big spread. And so anyway, I told them, like, I've got several camera pictures of deer like this. You know, I should have the ability to shoot that deer if I have confidence that this deer is a mature deer. And the game warden we should have two checks in this system, I believe. The game warden should have discretion to go, yeah, that's a mature deer. You're good to go, man. You shot a mature deer. Yeah, he wasn't 13 inches, but that's me having discretion. And then further, say the game warden doesn't agree with you. Well, then we need like a QDM panel of biologists or whoever to age that buck. You know, like, and then if it's still, and I know that's like a long process, but I mean,
like an appeals situation.
Like an appeals situation, yeah. Like, if there's a problem between, you know, discrepancy between game warden and hunter, then we can take it and we can send the jaw onto a panel. And if the panel agrees it's an old enough buck, you're good to go, man. You know, like, this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to shoot 5-year-old deer. We're not trying to shoot 170s, you know, like, or are we, you know? And so, I feel like that's the first thing that I kind of said. And then the second thing is I told him the story of me shooting my first buck. And this was in South Texas. There was no antler restrictions at the time. And it was probably 9 inches wide. It was a 6-point. So it had brow tines and G2s, basically. And deer probably had a lot of potential to be a good deer. But in the end, it turned out to be food for me, my sister, my dad, and my mom. And the absolute best memory and most exciting harvest I've ever had in my life. I will never be more jacked up than I was then. And I almost shook out of the tree this year when I shot that deer. You know, like, this was unreal. And, you know, if it had been a doe, I would have been almost as excited.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Almost. Like it still would have been the best deer that I ever shot, you know, but it just being that it was a buck, man, that was just cooler, you know? And so I kind of told him that story, and I said, you know, if we're not going to encourage like QDM co-ops and do like, you know, like they were talking about with the ATA, let's just encourage bow hunter education. Well, let's encourage landowner QDM co-op education, you know, that kind of thing. But if we're not going to do that and allow landowners to manage their bucks in the way that they want to, then we need to revisit the law and try to like develop something specific that a clause that allows youth hunters of a certain age to harvest any buck, in my opinion. Dude, we're talking about nowadays, all these people are wanting to do these podcasts and these articles on recruitment and retention of hunters and how the baby boomers are moving off and they're getting done hunting and they're just, you know, they're living out their lives, and now our numbers are suffering. Nobody has a solution. Well, this isn't maybe the only solution, but this could be a big part of it. How about we give our hunters a chance to shoot a buck that is actually running around in the woods instead of the ghost that lives 3 properties over that's 5 years old and scores 140 inches.
2 a.m. on the trail camera. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. He shows up at your feeder at 2 a.m., you know, here in Texas. Man, let's give that 10-year-old kid like an opportunity to shoot a buck and experience the excitement that I know I did that day and the success, and then crave it more. And then he, you know, develops into the guy who wants to shoot the 5-year-old deer, you know. I mean, if that's your recruitment and then your retention because of your success. You can sit there and recruit guys all day long or kids all day long, but if they sit in a stand for 3 days and they don't see anything, or they have to hold off on that like basket rack 8-point that's 2 years old because he's not, because the state doesn't deem him as a trophy enough, you know, big enough buck or whatever, he's probably going to go, or she is probably going to go either, you know, get in the basketball gym and go play on an AAU team and be successful doing that and have a passion for that, or start playing video games and, you know, just something, get on a smartphone. There's just too much these days for kids to be excited about and you know, to grab their attention. If we're not going to give them successful ventures out into the woods.
Yeah. So I'm with you on all your stuff, and I'd like to maybe explore a few of the things you said. First of all, I will always be, and this is just my conservative nature, I suppose, but a proponent of education over regulation every time. Education over regulation works. It gives people something to care about. Regulation is something that you have to obey. Education is something that you like believe in.
Right.
Once you like are educated of things, you know, and you got to like find a way to get people to it. But guess what? We all go to hunter education because we have to, right? And I guess that's a regulation there. But like, you're finding ways to get people to learn about this stuff. If you made it cool or made it like what part of what you do as a hunter to go learn about aging deer on the hoof and proper herd management and why mature bucks are cool. And it's kind of part of what we do as a podcast. You know, we talk about mature bucks because we like to hunt mature bucks and we give you reasons why. But I'm not saying you have to, right? But it's fun to us, and we think it would be fun to other people, so we talk about it. So I think that day in and day out, educational regulation will always work way better, and I wish we would do more of that. And that goes for the CWD stuff. It goes for this stuff. It goes for a lot of things that we talk about, right? The other thing I want to talk about is like, and I'm gonna disclose something here. Yeah, I don't hate I don't dislike the antler regulations as much as you do, because I see the other side of it. And I know you do too, but maybe I'm just a little bit more okay with it than you are, just a little bit. No, really, I'm not being sarcastic, just barely, you know. But I like your idea of letting a kid shoot whatever they like. How do you make it work? How do you make sure dad isn't using kids' tags? All that kind of stuff, you know.
But dad could do that during youth season anytime.
People
you know?
do it, and it drives me crazy.
Yeah.
I know people that do it too. I'm going to turn you in. I'm mad. But I would like to actually take it a step further and say, you get a first buck tag.
I thought about this.
It doesn't matter if you're a 25-year-old lady who's looking for a way to get some organic meat, or you're a 12-year-old who's fixing to start getting to hunt by themselves. After you take hunter's education, you have a 3-year buffer where you get a first buck tag. You can shoot any buck you like for the first 3 years you hunt. I believe that if you hunt for 3 years, you're going to encounter some buck and have the ability to shoot it in most places.
Great idea.
Yeah, and if you pass deer or you don't kill a deer by the first 3 years, it's probably of your own doing in some way, shape, or form. Like you wanted to shoot something bigger. And that is now your choice. You've made that choice to shoot something bigger, and then the antler restriction applies to you after the 3 years. But for the first 3 years, this 3 is arbitrary, but I think it's a pretty good number. Like for the first 3 years, you have a tag that, because it's all digital now. All our information's online. They know how many licenses I've bought in the state of Texas, right? So they can keep up with if you've bought 3 or when you bought your first one. And within those 3 years, you have a tag on your license that reads first buck tag. And you shoot whatever buck you want.
That's a good idea, man. I mean, this kind of goes back to our other opinionated podcast from last week where we kind of talked about the ram, and then we talked about like the people in some of those operations you were talking about, how just they're kind of they're rough,
Not all of them.
right?
Yeah.
No, yeah, and how some people you just wouldn't want your kid being around some of those people or whatever, and I mentioned how like when you're 16, you're like, what you think is cool should be a little different than when you're 45, or whatever. And this is kind of the same thing in my opinion. Like, when you're an adult, things in the world should look differently to you than when you were 16 or when you were 10 or whatever. You should have more discipline, I feel like. And that's like in all aspects of your life, whether it's, the way you speak to people or the things you do to people or the deer you shoot, or the way you view hunting, whereas you wanted to show all your friends your buck and that was the only reason you wanted to shoot a buck when you were little, pretty much, to now, like, you can't wait to eat the tongue out of it or whatever, weird things,
Yeah.
So, like, I think that this is one of those things, like, I agree with you, though. I think you make a good point that, like, the 25-year-old lady or whoever should have a 3-year first buck tag or whatever. I think that the first buck thing, whether you're 70 or 7, is a cool thing and should be there. But at the same time, like, you should be able to have some discipline when you are 25 years old or 30 years old to be able to go, maybe I should try to, be a positive influence in this whole biological equation, here, and maybe hold off on it for a bigger deer. And dude, I'm sitting here talking about this. I wanted to shoot Licky when he was a little 3-year-old,
and he looks sick.
And that's but that's just me. Like I'm that way, and that's probably where you and I are different on this rule a little bit, is that like I just think that personally, and this is me, this isn't Casey, this isn't the Element or whatever, this is Tyler. I think that if a buck suits your fancy, man, shoot that sucker. Yeah. That's what Indians
I'm right
did.
there with you, dude. But my fancy is just a little bit
fancier,
I guess. Yeah, I think that's right. But like, you say that like you should have a little bit more discrepancy as an adult. But what if that's just not your goal? What if you are a straight up meat hunter and you live in a county where you can only shoot a buck? And, until like 10 years ago, there was like 0 ways to shoot a doe with a rifle in this county that we're sitting in right now, right? And then what would you have done? Now you get a couple days to shoot a doe with a rifle. What if you can't hunt then? So, and your goal, you don't care about antler size. You don't care about any of that stuff. And I understand herd dynamics are important, but golly, baby deer die on the road all the time. So like just killing. If we have a couple people who just want to shoot a meat buck, let them do it.
I mean, yeah, I agree. That's the way I feel about it. I feel like the rule is very much influenced by the Texas trophy hunter, just like the mindset of us trophy hunters here in Texas, and just not that it's just Texas, but we're talking about that rule here in Texas. And, that's just what it's come to. And if it doesn't affect me too much because, there's going to be maybe a case here and there where like I'd shoot a buck and, I'm not going to because it's the rule, or whatever. But it doesn't really affect me that much because I'm usually holding out in basically a 1-buck county is what we are. We're a 2-buck county, but like I said, you got to have one unbrunched antler. So if you're looking for like a good representative of the species, it's not sickly or injured on its right side or whatever. Like you're going to be holding out for something decent, and that's what most of us do, and that's what I do. But I just look at like future generations, especially like my kids and you think about the kids that you have in youth, like if you ever were able to take them out on a little property you had around here to shoot a deer, dude, you sit there all season before you see a buck they could shoot, and like you said, like, they're not going to be bow hunting their first time out,
Yeah.
So they got 3 days to kill a doe.
We can get them my air bow.
There you go. I think we should wrap it up on that, man. Oh man. So we've got, I hope you guys are still with this. I know this was a lot and it was a lot of directions, but these are just some of the things that have been weighing on our minds, and we've been visiting with guests, and we've got more guests lined up. So we wanted to get this off our chest. We've got a couple of videos that hopefully are going to release soon. We got a little thing that I made up that I told Casey, I was like, man, this is probably pretty stupid, but it's some clips from a trip that I took last year to Colorado, and I got to catch some really cool native cutthroats. So put together a little highlight of that, and we're thinking about releasing that on Fish Friday. So we got that. We also have, if you got some like duck in the freezer, if you're a waterfowl guy and you got some ducks in the freezer, if you don't know how to do a duck popper, we'll show you how, but you probably know. They're pretty easy. But man, we did a little video of that, and that'll be released soon if it hasn't already by the time this podcast releases. I guess as I wrap this up, I kind of wrote some stuff down, and I wanted to kind of get back to what we originally started this podcast about, which is being yourself. What I'd say is just, ask yourself, like, do you have a wife or a kid or a friend or a parent that loves you, or do you have people that you show love? And if so, that means you're awesome. I just think that's cool, and I think you should be able to give yourself validity that way. You don't need to be anything else. Just strive to be better every day. And there are different ways to, like we talked about with Joe Cortez, like there are different ways to consider success. But I think striving to be more disciplined and being a better person every day, and just don't worry about lusting for these things like the turkeys. If you don't live in turkey country, if you don't live at Lake Fork, you ain't going to catch a big as bass as me. You know what I'm saying? So it's okay, man. It's okay. Don't be a bass fisherman. Go catch some tilapia instead or something, and eat them and enjoy them. We went out and smoked some carp last year, just on fly rods, whatever, get into something and get outdoors and have fun. You don't have to, the grass isn't always greener on the other side. And I know that's very cliche, but it's the absolute truth. And it literally can span your whole life if you think about it that way. So, like I said, if you're listening and you aren't hunting sheep or turkeys or big sheds on farms, it's okay. Go do what you do and be excited about it. In my opinion, if you are somebody that can do something cool like that and you have the ability, like Stephen Drake, he literally does the coolest thing like every other week, that you can possibly do in hunting or fishing, he's going from like the colds of British Columbia to like Hawaii, that's cool. And I think that guys like that, if you're listening to this, if you're somebody that people are looking up to out there in the outdoor media world, it's your responsibility to be truthful and inspire the people who think you are cool and love what you're doing, even if they're different than you. And like doing things that aren't as culturally cool, considered cool. So, for everybody out there, just make sure you be yourself and accept that people are different than you, and that we can still like have similar causes that we go after. And I think these are ideals that have been visited several times. Casey's done a really good job of laying these out for you on this podcast, and I hope I have as well. So, yeah, love each other, encourage each other, compliment each other, don't tear others down, and stand for the good. Remember, this is your element.
Live in it.
Hey everybody, listen up. I got mega huge news. Meat Eater Live is heading back out on the road. That's right. Join me and the crew. Clay Newcomb, Cal, Yanni, Spencer's going to be there. Phil the engineer's going to be there. Meat Eater Live headed back out. Now, when you get every ticket, okay? Every ticket you buy, you get a signed copy of our new Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook. This tour is celebrating the release of the book. Buy a ticket, get a signed copy, Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook, wild game recipes for the grill, smoker, camp stove, and campfire, which I'll point out is a $38 value. Here's where we're going to go. April 23rd, the Mesa Arts Center in Mesa, Arizona. April 24, the Balboa Theater in San Diego. April 25, the Grove in Anaheim, California. April 27, the Crest Theater in Sacramento. April 29, the Union in Salt Lake City. April 30, the Egyptian in Boise. May 1, the Wilma Theater in Missoula. May 2, the Bing Crosby Theater in Spokane, Washington. May 4, Revolution Hall in Portland, Oregon. And May 5, the last day of the tour, Pantages Theater in Tacoma, Washington. For tickets and more information, visit the events page at themeateater.com. Hope to see you at the show.